In 1865, a 23-year-old William James, the future father of American psychology, boarded a ship to the Amazon rainforest with the most famous scientist of the era. He thought it would be the adventure of a lifetime. Instead, it became the darkest, most terrifying year of his life. He returned home physically broken, mentally destroyed, and wrote in his private diary words that still shock people today, and wrote in his diary that he had lost all will to live. Tonight, in part 3, you'll discover the jungle expedition that went horribly wrong, the mysterious illness that left him bedridden for months, and the suicidal crisis that accidentally gave birth to the entire philosophy of pragmatism. This is the part nobody talks about in whispers. Stay until the end. What he did to save himself will change how you see life forever. As William James moved into his late teenage years, his experiences continued to shape his character in profound ways. The combination of travel, family influence, and personal observation gave him a sense of the world that was unusual for someone of his age. He understood that life was complex, full of challenges, and rich with possibilities. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who were guided by rigid plans or expectations, William had learned to live with uncertainty and to use it as a tool for growth. He began to see that the mind could be trained through careful observation, reflection, and disciplined thinking, a lesson he would later teach to his students at Harvard. Education, in its many forms, remained central to William's development, although he did not follow a traditional school path for long stretches. He studied under private tutors and in various institutions. During the family's travels, these lessons included language, mathematics, natural sciences, and history. He was not only absorbing facts but also learning how to think critically and compare ideas. The variety in his schooling exposed him to different methods of instruction and reasoning. William noticed how some teachers relied on memorization, while others encouraged reasoning and independent thought. These early insights later influenced his educational philosophy, which emphasized personal discovery and understanding rather than rote learning. William's interest in science became more focused during this period. He studied anatomy, physiology, and the natural sciences with care and curiosity. These studies gave him a practical method for observing and analyzing the world. He began to see patterns in natural phenomena, which sparked an interest in the systematic study of human behavior. Although he did not yet know the term psychology, he was already thinking about questions that would later define the field. How does the mind work? How do habits form? How are emotions connected to thought? These questions occupied much of his attention and guided his informal studies in the years before formal academic training. At the same time, William continued to reflect on spiritual and philosophical questions introduced by his father. He had learned that life was not only physical but also moral and spiritual. Henry James Sr. encouraged his children to observe the inner life, to question beliefs, and to search for meaning in personal experience. William accepted some of these lessons while rejecting others, developing a careful balance between skepticism and openness. This ability to respect different viewpoints became a hallmark of his later work, particularly in his writings on philosophy and religious experience. Social interactions also contributed to William's growing understanding of human nature. In the various cities where he lived or traveled, he observed the behavior of people from different social classes, professions, and cultural backgrounds. He noticed the way individuals responded to challenges, success, and failure. He saw patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that were consistent across cultures, as well as patterns that varied with upbringing and environment. These observations cultivated his empathy and analytical skills, preparing him to approach psychology with both rigor and human sensitivity. William's artistic training continued to influence his development, even after he had decided not to pursue art as a profession. The precision and patience required for drawing helped him develop a keen attention to detail. He learned to observe subtle differences in light, form, and movement. These skills later translated into his ability to notice fine distinctions in human behavior, emotional expression, and thought processes. Though his medium had shifted from visual art to writing and analysis, the observational discipline he gained from painting remained central to his approach. His relationship with his family continued to shape his character. He learned to respect differences of opinion and to navigate conflicting personalities. While he admired his brother Henry's creative talent, he also recognized that his own interests lay in intellectual analysis rather than imaginative storytelling. His sister Alice, though often ill, provided him with insight into the struggles of human life and the importance of understanding emotional suffering. William's father, through both his guidance and his example, taught him to value integrity, personal responsibility, and the careful examination of ideas. During these years, William's sense of self became clearer, even amidst uncertainty. He recognized that he was drawn to understanding the workings of the human mind and the moral and spiritual dimensions of life. He understood that life was not a simple matter of acquiring knowledge, but also involved judgment, choice, and effort. These early reflections shaped his belief that human beings are active agents in their own development and that personal responsibility is central to a meaningful life. By the end of this stage of his youth, William James had gathered a rich foundation of experience, observation, and reflection. He had traveled extensively, studied many subjects, and been exposed to a wide range of intellectual and spiritual ideas. He had learned the value of careful observation, empathy, and critical thought. Though he still faced uncertainty about his ultimate career path, he had developed the qualities of patience, discipline, and curiosity that would guide him in the years to come. In summary, page 5 emphasizes the importance of William's late teenage years in preparing him for a life of intellectual achievement. The combination of family influence, travel, varied education, artistic training, and personal reflection created a mind capable of deep understanding and original thought. These experiences provided the groundwork for his later contributions to philosophy, psychology, and the study of human experience. The challenges of uncertainty, observation, and critical thought were not obstacles but essential tools in shaping a thinker of enduring significance. During the later years of his adolescence, William James's experiences and observations began to form a more structured understanding of the world. He had lived in several countries, been exposed to multiple educational systems, and observed countless examples of human thought and behavior. All of these experiences contributed to a growing awareness of the variety and complexity of life. He recognized that individuals differ widely in temperament, intelligence, and moral perspective, and that these differences are influenced by both upbringing and environment. This awareness helped him develop a broad-minded approach to human nature, one that would later characterize his philosophy and psychology. William's health continued to affect his daily life. He often experienced physical discomforts, including back pain, headaches, and fatigue. These conditions sometimes limited his activities, but they also gave him insight into human vulnerability. He became keenly aware that mental and physical states are deeply connected, an understanding that influenced his later work in psychology. The need to manage his own health taught him patience and self-observation. He learned to notice subtle changes in mood, energy, and thought, and this skill would later allow him to study consciousness with a sensitivity that few of his contemporaries possessed. His father's influence remained a central force in William's development. Henry James Sr. encouraged independent thinking, emphasizing that the mind must seek truth actively rather than accept it passively. This philosophy instilled in William a sense of intellectual responsibility. He understood that every claim, idea, or belief needed to be examined carefully, and that personal reflection was as important as study. The habit of careful thought and the commitment to personal investigation became foundational principles in his later work, shaping both his psychology and philosophy. Travel continued to play a major role in William's life. In cities such as Paris, London, Geneva, and Bonn, he witnessed cultural, scientific, and artistic developments firsthand. Museums, libraries, and lecture halls offered him opportunities to study the world's knowledge directly. Each city exposed him to new ideas and methods of thinking. In Germany, he observed the structured approach to scholarship. In France, he noted the blending of creativity and analysis. In England, he saw the value of tradition and debate. These experiences cultivated a flexible mind, capable of integrating diverse perspectives into coherent understanding. William also became more conscious of social and moral questions, observing how people interacted, how they responded to success or failure, and how they maintained personal integrity. He began to develop an interest in the ethical dimensions of life. He noticed that intellectual ability alone did not guarantee moral understanding or happiness. Personal habits, social influences, and the cultivation of character were equally important. These early insights would later form part of his work on ethics and human behavior, demonstrating the connection between philosophy and everyday life. During these years, William's artistic practice continued to influence his approach to observation. Although he had moved away from a professional pursuit of art, the skills he had developed in paying attention to detail, careful analysis, and appreciation of nuance carried over into a study of the mind. He learned to notice subtle differences in behavior, expression, and thought. These abilities were crucial for his later research in psychology, where the observation of consciousness and behavior required precision and careful attention. His family continued to provide a rich environment for intellectual and moral growth. Conversations with his father, siblings, and visiting scholars exposed him to diverse opinions on philosophy, religion, and science. He learned to listen critically, to evaluate arguments, and balance competing ideas. These discussions taught him that disagreement is not necessarily destructive. Rather, it can refine understanding and reveal deeper truths. William's ability to hold multiple perspectives in mind simultaneously became a distinctive feature of his intellectual style. During this period, William also faced moments of self-doubt. The many possibilities open to him sometimes created anxiety. He worried about choosing a career path that might limit his potential or fail to satisfy his intellectual curiosity. Yet he also recognized that uncertainty offered opportunities for growth. By facing these doubts, he developed resilience and the capacity to evaluate options thoughtfully. He learned that the process of reflection and choice is as important as the outcome itself, a lesson he would later emphasize in his philosophical writings on free will and human decision-making. His interests in science, philosophy, and human behavior began to converge. William realized that a single approach could not fully explain life. Science provided knowledge of the physical world. Philosophy offered frameworks for reasoning and understanding. And observation of human behavior revealed the complexity of experience. He began to see that these fields are interconnected, and that a complete understanding of life requires attention to all of them. This insight would form the basis of his later work, in which psychology, philosophy, and ethics were integrated into a unified approach to studying human experience. By the close of this stage in his youth, William James had developed a remarkable capacity for observation, reflection, and critical thought. He had experienced a broad education, traveled extensively, engaged in artistic practice, and learned to navigate moral and social questions. Despite continuing uncertainty about his career, he possessed the essential qualities of curiosity, patience, and discernment. These qualities would guide him through the challenges and achievements of his adult life, providing a foundation for his lasting contributions to philosophy and psychology. Page 6 concludes the middle section of Chapter 1, emphasizing the development of William James's intellectual and moral capacities. The combination of travel, family influence, personal observation, and careful reflection prepared him for the more focused studies he would undertake in the years that followed. His early experiences, though varied and sometimes challenging, created a foundation upon which his later accomplishments were built. And when William James finally dragged himself out of that darkness, he made one decision that shocked his family, shocked Harvard, and changed the history of psychology forever. In Part 4, you'll see how a single letter from Europe forced him to enroll in medical school against his will, and how he hated every second of it, and how that hatred accidentally created the world's first psychology laboratory. Part 4 drops tomorrow 8 p.m. Subscribe plus bell on. You don't want to miss what comes next.